Today, we're going to tackle a really common pitfall for nonprofit leaders, all the myths surrounding charitable fundraising exemptions. Getting this wrong can lead to some costly fines and really hurt your reputation. So let's clear up the confusion.
And just so you know, all this information comes straight from the compliance experts at Ironwood Registrations.
All right, so this explainer is part of our multi-state fundraising compliance series. Our whole goal here is to break down these complex rules into practical, actionable terms that your whole team can actually use.
So many nonprofits just assume that these registration requirements don't apply to them. But let me ask you, do you really qualify for an exemption? The rules are, well, they're complex, they vary dramatically by state, and frankly, they're just often misunderstood. So let's clear up some of the biggest misconceptions right now.
First up is probably the most common one of all. It's this belief that having 501c3 status from the IRS is like a golden ticket, that it just automatically exempts you from any state registration.
Well, it's absolutely crucial to understand that we're talking about two completely separate worlds of regulation here. You've got your federal tax-exempt status, which is granted by the IRS, but then you have charitable fundraising rules, and those are created and enforced at the state level. They're totally separate systems.
So here's the bottom line. Your 501c3 status, it just confirms that your organization is exempt from federal taxes. That's it. It does not automatically exempt you from state fundraising registration. The reality is, a ton of federally recognized charities are still required to register in every single state where they ask for donations.
And that state-level control brings us right to our next myth, this idea that if you get an exemption in your home state, it somehow applies everywhere else. That is just not true.
For example, sure, a lot of states offer exemptions for religious organizations or schools or hospitals, but the specific definitions and the requirements for these categories, they vary widely. What one state considers an educational institution might not even qualify in the state right next door.
Let's dig into that religious category for just a second, because it's a perfect example of this nuance. A church itself, yeah, it's often exempt. But a separate faith-based charity, like a mission organization or a humanitarian ministry that operates on its own, that organization may very well need to register before soliciting the public. It all comes down to the legal structure.
Okay, another common assumption. Small nonprofits don't need to register, right? But the word small is actually defined very specifically by state regulators. And trust me, the criteria might surprise you. See, exemptions for small charities often aren't based on your total revenue alone. States might also look at your annual fundraising revenue specifically, whether you're hiring professional fundraisers or if all your solicitations are handled purely by volunteers.
And here's another critical detail for you. Even if you check all the boxes, even if you do qualify as a small charity, you might not be completely off the hook. Some states will still require you to submit an exemption application or some kind of informational filing just to formally claim that status with their office.
Now, this complexity, it definitely extends into the digital world. And this creates another major compliance blind spot. The belief that online donations, from that Donate Now button, don't trigger registration requirements.
I mean, think about it. You post a campaign on your website, you send out an email, or you put something on social media. That one single post instantly reaches potential donors across the entire country. And from a regulatory point of view, that can be considered solicitation in every single jurisdiction where it can be seen. So, the big takeaway here is, if your organization is fundraising online with a national reach, then your compliance review needs to have a national scope too. You have to consider the requirements in multiple states, not just your own.
So why is all of this so complicated? Well, it really boils down to one simple fact. When it comes to charitable solicitation laws in the U.S., uniformity is the exception, not the rule.
Every state sets its own rules. The exemption categories, the revenue thresholds, the filing requirements, even the basic definition of what actually counts as solicitation. All of that can change dramatically from one state to the next.
And this really highlights a key point. Being exempt doesn't mean you can just ignore state charity offices. You might still need to file some paperwork just to prove your eligibility. Ultimately, taking the time to really understand when these exemptions apply, and maybe more importantly, when they don't, it's all about protecting your organization. A careful review of these rules helps you maintain compliance, and that lets you focus on what really matters, supporting your mission and your charitable programs.
And that leaves us with one final question for you and your team to really think about. When it comes to your fundraising compliance, is your strategy based on assumption, or is it based on careful state-by-state analysis?